Alright, y'all, so Halloween is approaching. I'm excited about it. I've always loved Halloween, even though I've kind of taken a step back from horror movies lately because since the 90s, man, to me, personally speaking, horror movies have kind of taken just a downfall, you know what I mean? I'm not into the exorcism type shit. I'm not into that old demonic and satanic type shit, man. I like a good slasher horror film with a good villain, decent acting, cheesiness, a lot of blood and guts and shit. Like, that's the kind of stuff I like, man. Something you can just have fun with. I don't get into all them possession movies and shit like that, so don't expect much of that from me. So I'm gonna dedicate majority of this month to the horror movies of yesterday and some of the present and some that I've slept on over the years, because there's some that I have not watched, so I'm gonna watch those, review them for you all, and yeah, we're gonna go from there. I'm gonna start out with a bang, and I'm gonna go with the first slasher film, the OG of the slasher genre, and that's my boy Michael Myers in the original Halloween. Starting out with that one, it was made in 1978, directed by the legendary John Carpenter, who was one of my favorite directors, starring Jamie Lee Curtis, who was the Scream Queen. Okay, she's the OG Scream Queen. So for those of you that seen Halloween, you pretty much know the premise of it. So it's the story of little Michael Myers. He, for some weird reason, the devil jumps into him and he kills his sister. Yeah, I did just say I don't like satanic shit or anything that has to do with the devil. They never reference him as the devil, but Dr. Loomis does say when he looked into his eyes, he saw nothing but pure evil. Spoilers, by the way. But Halloween is old as shit. If you haven't seen a Halloween already, man, I don't even know what to say. Anyways, this 6-year-old kid, for whatever reason, on Halloween night, he's dressed as a clown, kills his older sister, and they put him away in an insane asylum. Dr. Loomis tries to help him, and come to find out that he really can't help this kid because he's just evil, and there's nothing that can be done about it. And he grows up to be Michael Myers, or what they referred to him back then was the Shadow or the Shape. No, I'm sorry, they called him the Shape. My bad. So Michael Myers decides to return home, and he has one final person to kill, and that's his sister Lori, which I can't remember if they said that Lori was his sister in the movie. I think that probably came up in the sequel. So yeah, he's back in town on a Halloween night. He's trying to kill Lori, trying to take Lori out. Played by Jamie Lee Curtis, and she's a babysitter watching these two kids, and for the whole night she's ducking and dodging this dude, trying to escape this evilness. Of course, there's casualties that happen, and she comes out victorious. Her and Dr. Loomis defeat the evil Michael Myers, and we set up for a whole franchise full of Halloween movies that come even to this day. The first Halloween, even though it is a slasher movie, there wasn't a lot of blood in this film, okay? There was a little blood here and there, but compared to like Freddy or to Jason or many other of the slasher films that came after it, it's like really watered down compared to those movies. But it still works to this day because the way it was filmed, the suspense, okay? I watched with my daughter. Like, I like to introduce my daughter to movies that I grew up watching. And at first, it kind of took her a while to get into it. She's like, okay, there's not a lot going on. But then she did appreciate the filmmaking aspect of it, like, you know, the suspense and the build-up and how he would pop up, you know, here and there or whatever. And it was still a little scary, you know, it was still frightening. And Dr. Loomis was great. Jamie Lee Curtis was great. Everything about Halloween was good, but it is a 70s horror film, so it is a little dated. It doesn't really hold up to the horror movies, like especially now, like as far as the effects and jump scares and the body count and the kills and all that shit. But I still think it is still a very effective horror film. The score by John Carpenter is probably one of the illest scores, not only for a horror movie, but just in movies in general. That score, that John Carpenter score for Halloween, is the most iconic score as far as a horror genre of all time. Probably top 10 musical scores of all time as far as being memorable, because when you hear Halloween, that's the first thing you think of. is the movie, okay? And there's a lot of great movies, but their scores are not really memorable. This film had one of those rare scores, and when you hear it, that you automatically know what it is. What else more can I say about it, man? Classic horror movie. It kicked off the slasher genre, even though some can argue and say the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was the original. But I don't consider Texas Chainsaw Massacre a slasher movie. I don't know. Texas Chainsaw Massacre was weird as fuck, and I gotta do a review on that as well because I really don't know how to categorize it. I mean, because it played out like a documentary, but there was some scenes like that were really intense, and then also they did a prequel to that called Leatherface that came out this year, which I want to review as well. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up. I'm gonna give Halloween a A. I'm gonna give it an A. It's one of the best of its genre, one of the best horror films of all time. What did you guys think about it? Comment below, comment freely. Thank you for watching. This is Rashad G signing out.